What's going on, peeps? It's your boy, Atypical Security Guard. Good morning. I think it's Friday. I've been off for the last couple of days, heading into work right now. Speaking of being off, I just saw a question that came through, and it said, I work private security. I, work over 40 hours a week. And then on my days off, I'm always getting called in. And, like a lot of people, this person is a little frustrated, doesn't feel that their time is being respected. And they weren't necessarily complaining, but just was kind of asking how that works. Are they obligated to go in? What happens if they don't go in? Things like this. I think that if you have worked in the security industry long enough, you're aware of how this goes. You're aware of the dynamics of the quick call in, right? And the person said something that I thought was really important. He says, the problem is that the calling in to help somebody or to take a shift, it's always last minute. I'll be asleep or I'll be heading out to do something, and the company will call me last minute, and that's not fair. You got to think of it this way, guys. There's a couple of things. Number one, most of the time when you're working in contract security, your hours aren't guaranteed. The opportunity to make money, it doesn't come just from working your normal hours. You make most of the bulk of your money, by working overtime if it's available. So I have always heard, whenever people get hired, and I've had the privilege of sitting in on a couple of hiring meetings where the ops manager will be like, hey, this is contract work. It's a little bit hit and miss. Like, what kind of work are you looking to do? How many hours do you want? Most people at the beginning of the hiring process with a new security company, they all say the same thing. Give me as many hours as you have. Because most people recognize that the way that you make your money is to work hours and to get overtime. But that doesn't last long. There's very few people that I have seen that have come through that have been able to maintain like a heavy workload. There's a couple, but for the most part, the people that think that they want a lot of hours, the people that think that they want to really be a grinder, like, it's a lot harder than people think. The second thing is that the same way that you feel when your company is reaching out to you last minute to cover a shift for a irresponsible coworker, that's how they feel when you call off last minute. You got to remember, it goes both ways, right? They are reaching out to us last minute and having us cover something for somebody. But as officers, we do that all the time. Not me personally, but we as officers do that to the company all the time. Something comes up, can't make it to work, don't want to go in, not feeling it that day. It's not uncommon for an officer to just call out. That's literally what leads to them needing to call another officer in. Now, whether or not you have to answer the phone, whether or not you have to answer that call, you really don't. My personal advice is, when you're off of work, if this is something that is happening regularly, turn your phone off. At the very least, turn your ringer off, put your phone on Do Not Disturb, let the message go into your message box, and then if you want to listen to it, and it's something that you want to take, then you go ahead and do that. A lot of times when you're new to a company, when you're younger, when you're trying to establish yourself, when you're trying to, kind of ingratiate yourself to the company, to the boss, you feel the need to take every opportunity and take every shift. And I'm going to be honest with you, if you don't have that mentality of I'm going to step up when I'm needed, I'm going to help out where I can, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Let me explain. Contract security work is all based around the fact that we fulfill the obligations of the contract. So over a long enough period of time, if multiple officers, like they do, decide that they're going to call off, not show up, do a no-call, no-show, if we can't find people to cover those shifts, then ultimately the contractor's going to be like, well, you know what? we're just going to go with a different company. So your boss, your company, the people that you're working for, they are in a way dependent on other officers being willing to pick up shifts on their day off. The machine doesn't continue to move unless officers are willing to pick up shifts on their day off. Now, they can't necessarily mandate it by policy, because we're not union, we're at will. But in a very real sense, they can mandate it de facto. What does de facto mean? De facto means it's not a policy, but it is. It's not a law, but it is, right? The results and the effects are no different than if it were a policy or a law, right? So if you're not willing to do that, especially if you're the new guy, if you're the low man on the totem pole, you are signaling yourself out as being what? Not a team player. So I caution you, even though I understand, even though I get it, even though I completely see where you're coming from, I caution you. Hang on a second here. Stand by. Just had to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I caution you to not be too unwilling to not take those shifts, because if you're not pulling your weight, you're not doing your part, and you're not willing to help solidify that contract, ultimately, like when the contract loses hours, and they will, when the contract goes bye-bye, and ultimately it will, then you will be one of those officers that's either not retained or one of those officers that is not taken care of in terms of hours moving forward. You got to think of it like that penny in the jar. I always talk about that penny in the jar principle. You go to the gas station, there's a little jar there, and it says, got a penny, leave a penny, need a penny, take a penny. Every time that you take a shift, hypothetically, every time that you pick up a shift that is not yours, that somebody else has dropped, that's an opportunity for you to put a penny in the jar with your company and with your supervisor. Now, I say hypothetically because a lot of companies will just simply use you and abuse you, and then when push comes to shove, they don't have your back, they don't look out for you, they don't take care of you. So I can't say that by doing that you guarantee it. But what I can say is that by doing that, you create the habits, the work ethic, and the reliability that ultimately, regardless of what company you work for, what company you're a part of down the road, it will pay off. That attitude of helping out, that attitude of stepping up, that attitude of helping to secure that contract for the company, even if it doesn't work with the company that you're currently working for, when you move on to your next phase, when you move on to other aspects of your work career down the road, because I'm assuming you're younger, having that type of work mentality, having that type of work ethic, it will pay off. I promise you it will. It seems like it won't. And maybe it won't for the next 5 to 10 years, but somewhere down the road, if you keep that work ethic, you will. Now, all of that to be said, here's my final thing. You cannot allow yourself to get burnout. Private security is hard enough as it is. It's thankless enough as it is, right? For a lot of people, there's very little upward mobility. And for a lot of companies, there's really nowhere for you to advance to. You know, in California, I guess they have like this law that you can't open your own company unless you have a certain level of management experience. And then, you know, in order to get that management experience, a lot of companies aren't allowing you to do that. They're doing their best to kind of squeeze out the mom and pop shops. If you're in that situation, like you're in a bad position even to begin with. My point is that there's not a lot of upward mobility in private security. There's not a lot of positive aspects in a lot of ways to private security. Don't allow yourself to get burnt out by working, you know, more hours than you really should, more hours than you really want to, more hours than you can. Like, there has to be some balance, and only you can decide what that balance is. If you're a grinder and you want to put in 60, 70 hours a week, stack cash, make bank, then do that. If you prefer to work part-time, you don't really want to put a lot of time and effort into this in terms of actually working shifts or whatever, then you can also do that. There's opportunities for that. You can literally work as much in security or as little in security as you want, but you just have to kind of decide where you're going to fit in with your company. If you're the guy that doesn't want to be called on your off days, you can tell your supervisor that. You can tell your company that. Just let them know. And I would say if that's where you're at, I would be upfront about that, because if you're upfront about it and you're transparent about it, that might be a lot better than you just never answering the phone or returning the message for the call off in terms of moving forward. So that is my advice in that situation. If anybody has any questions for me, you can drop a question in the comments. I'm doing my little difficult overchange here on the bridge. And once I get across this, if you have any questions, I'll pull off to the side and I will answer your questions. If this is your first time, if you're new here, remember, well, don't remember, I'm letting you know. I run a security guard information channel, private protection channel, and we're also, we're stretching our wings a little bit and we're moving into just more conversational topics as well. I talk about security all day. I talk about personal protection all day. I talk about firearms all the time. So, my wife and I, we come on and we talk about current topics. And then I have a tendency to podcast with people about different things as well. So almost over the bridge. Oh, man. Speaking of time off, I had 3 days off this week. That was amazing. 3 days back to back to back. Had a training recertification session that fell in between my offset days off. So I had 3 days in a row. It's so important to get your downtime, guys. Like just the emotional, mental, physical feeling of being able to like sleep in, spend time with my wife, just be around the house, like just not be downtown in Portland. I feel so energized and recharged. I know I don't look like it. I always look sleepy. I have an eye condition. But I feel so recharged, and just like the sun's out, it's not raining. It's a beautiful thing. All right, let me check these questions if there's any questions or comments. Myra says hi, hello. Somebody says mandatory overtime. Yep. Sorry, sir. Gotta force you. Oh, the dreaded phone call. Yeah, absolutely. Someone says I'm out of town. Any recommendations for starting a security company? Depending on what state you're in, if you're outside of California, starting a security company is a great idea. Especially, guys, as we get closer to the election, there's going to be unrest on either side, no matter which way it goes. There's going to be unrest. And I don't think that the things that we've seen since 2020 in terms of like riots, protests, government shutdowns, like everything that happened, I think that's the new normal. I think that's the new normal. And I think that if you have an opportunity to offer protection in any way, I think that's a great business model. Someone says overworked leads to situations. Yeah, you got to be careful, guys. If you put in a ton of hours, if you work a lot, if you burn that candle at both ends, and you're involved in something that's major, that's going to come up. Be able to articulate how you maintain your sleep, how you maintain your rest. That is true. Someone asked what state I'm in. I am in the state of Oregon. I live in the city of Portland. Portland, Oregon. Which over the last couple of days has been absolutely beautiful, which is not normal here. At the end of your 12-hour shift, absolutely. Well, I'm about to head in for mine. All right, guys, I'm pulling into the office. As always, I appreciate you sitting here and letting me ramble with you. Hopefully, you're getting value from the information that I'm putting out. Please, if you haven't, like, share, and subscribe, and become a member of our channel. As always, watch your six, be careful, and be great.